My name is Ethan Petrick, and this is...
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. It's picked up by Michigan State's Jalen Watts Jackson, and he scores on the last play of the game. Kellogg's throw. It's going to be tipped and caught. It's caught. It's caught. It's a touchdown, Western. You can't believe what just happened. What a time to be alive. Diving touchdown, Nebraska. Davison on the deflection. Nebraska's a point away. Rosen fakes the spike. And it's a touchdown.
Oh, they don't have him yet. Look at Tommy Frazier. How many tackles can one man break?
35-30. It'll be Galloway down the sideline. He's going to score. He's going to score. He's going to score. It's a touchdown. How much?
Welcome into another episode of Save Saturday's You, the number one college football podcasting show with a host named Ethan and a host named Will. Yes, that is new. Will is joining us from the OG podcast and maybe Boston Bias. The status of that podcast is pending.
Who knows?
It's really up to him.
It's a lit intro.
It's long.
It's time to be alive.
That's one of my favorite calls in college football right there.
I just love how his voice goes out every time. Alive.
It's too bad I don't have that isolated as just its own thing that I can play.
You know he's into it too. You know what he's giving off is just pure emotion.
There's
his inner feels.
It reminds me of this one call that they listen to at the Ticket basically daily, but it's Paul Allen, the former play-by-play / color commentator for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah.
And he's a huge Vikings fan, and they're playing the Cardinals in the playoffs, and he's like, the clock's ticking down. The Cardinals need like a last-second Hail Mary to win.
Yeah.
And he's like, get back, guys. He's like begging them to like put more guys in coverage. He's like, get back, guys. And then the Cardinals throw the touchdown. It's caught for a touchdown to win the game, and he just screams no into the mic. He's like
I'm ready to see this now.
and I'll pull it up for you after the show. But and then it finally ends with, there are Minnesota Vikings crying on the field. As a Packers fan, it just warms my heart to see that, because Bears are the hated rival technically, but they suck so bad. For my entire life, they've been bad, it seems, that I don't really see them as a rival. Minnesota Vikings, however, have had a good roster and mouthy fans that I hate the Minnesota Vikings probably more than I hate the Chicago Bears. And
Yeah,
the Detroit Lions are just like that little 3-year-old kid that just doesn't know what's going on.
Unless you were like born
If I was born during like the prime time
1985,
Bears,
like
yeah.
you're alive for then yeah. But since 1985, what have they been to one Super Bowl? They're kind of just garbage.
Yeah, the Bears have been trash for 20, 25, 30 years now.
The Lions are just kind of out there running.
They are.
They don't really know what the sport they're playing.
They're basically just the Tony Snell of the NFL.
Rip to Matthew Stafford, Calvin Johnson, Barry Sanders.
Multiple careers wasted.
Multiple careers wasted.
2 of those Hall of Fame, Matthew Stafford maybe.
If Matthew Stafford was on a different team, I think he'd be, I don't want to say Hall of Fame, but he'd be in the conversation. Like, it'd be is Matthew Stafford, that'd be the narrative.
He has the stats to be in the Hall of Fame. He doesn't have the playoff success.
Well, yeah, but he plays for the Lions. That's what I'm saying. Like, if
Yeah.
he played for anyone else, that was just half as decent as the Lions. I mean, half, not as trash as what I'm trying to say. I think he'd be in there. He'd be like I don't know. Do you think Matt Ryan is Hall of Fame bound?
I don't think he should, but I think he might get in because he won the MVP.
Yeah. I don't want to say I think he'd be in the same conversation as Matt Ryan.
Well, because this is a college football show,
We're not going to
I'm going to hit you with some trivia. What college did Matt Ryan go to? Boston College.
Really?
What about Matthew Stafford?
He went to Georgia, I know that.
Yeah.
Bulldog.
One for 2 there. But speaking of the college football, the Pac-12 is going to be back this weekend. They're starting their season and already have a game canceled. Washington versus Cal has been canceled. A Cal Cal football player tested positive for COVID, so they just canceled the entire game. Bit different than 22 players and staff for Wisconsin getting COVID, causing that game to be canceled. So Pac-12 starting off hot with the COVID, but we're reacting to the last week of college football, not looking forward to the next week. We do that on the OG podcast. Check that out on Saturday at 10. But reacting to this last week of college football, what were some winners and losers that you recognized in the last week, Will? I'll start. My number one winner is Cincinnati. Cincinnati went out and put the boots to the Memphis, what are they, the Wildcats?
Memphis?
Tigers?
The Tigers, yeah.
Memphis Tigers. 49-10, continuing their undefeated season. They're now 5-0. And look like they could potentially be the first group of 5 team to make it in the college football playoff. Their quarterback, he went off for 271 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, and then Jerome Ford, transfer from Alabama, running back, on 9 carries, went for 116 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's been a revelation in Cincinnati. He's been phenomenal all season. And then to top it all off, really ram home why this team is a winner, Oklahoma State lost. So now you can reasonably say the odds are against the Big 12 for putting a team in. The Big 10 is somewhat of a dumpster fire compared to with Ohio State sitting at the top and everyone else just beating each other. The ACC is going to have a game this next week against Clemson and Notre Dame, in which Clemson could easily lose, and that would probably eliminate the ACC from having 2 teams. SEC, same story. So all the top conferences, Pac-12 probably not going to get enough games in to put a team in. All the top conferences look set on either sending no one or one team. And Cincinnati, people knew coming into the season they'd be good. They've backed that up. And they've pretty much dominated everyone on their schedule. So there is a lot of potential for the Cincinnati Bearcats to be the first group of 5 team to make the college football playoff. And because of that, I have them as my number one winner.
Well, you started off with a winner. I'm going to go with the number one loser. I don't say number. There's a lot. I think there's a lot of losers every week, but the number one loser is, like we talked about yesterday, Clemson Tigers, in my opinion. Not going to have Trevor Lawrence in arguably the biggest game. No, I'm not even going to say arguably. This is the biggest game of the season. Winner probably goes to the college football playoff, depending if they can win their ACC title game. But I think Clemson's shaking their boots right now. They have a 5-star freshman coming in. He looked good last week, but they're going against a senior quarterback, a Notre Dame team that has a very experienced, very good run game, very, very deep running back squad at Notre Dame. So I think Clemson, not having Trevor Lawrence, is probably the biggest loser in the cup. And not saying they won't. I mean, they could win because it's a talented team. But
speaking of that freshman, I did figure out how to say his last name. It's DJ Uiagalelei.
Uiagalelei.
Yes. So we looked forward at that Notre Dame Clemson game, but looking back, we've already seen them struggle without Trevor Lawrence. Now I chalk that performance against Boston College up to failure on the defensive end. Do you think that because Trevor Lawrence was out, the defense played worse, or do you think that the defense wasn't the ones at fault there?
I mean, the defense, yeah, it's not the dominant defense that we're used to seeing from Clemson the past few years. But as much as you disagree with me on this, I think a quarterback plays a lot into how the defense performs. Just the way the quarterback is running the game, the way he plays. When you look at guys like Tom Brady in the NFL, I think you can see now like the offense can impact the defense and vice versa. I think both sides of the ball are impacting. I think with a freshman quarterback, he's probably not going to manage the game the way Trevor Lawrence will. Maybe has the defense on the field a little more often than Trevor Lawrence would have him on there. Probably a lot of quick with a true freshman quarterback. You're probably going to have more 3-and-outs. Defense, you have to get out there more, stay out there longer. And that might have played some part of it. I didn't watch the game, the Boston College game, but I think that all plays into how the defense performs. So it just comes down to the true freshman. He's gonna have to get experience really quick. It's not all just about having a strong arm and slinging the ball around. You gotta be able to figure out ways to win games, and that's managing the game as much as it's like almost a bad thing to say about a quarterback, but it's really not. It's a good thing. Like that's how you win football games. It's making big plays in big moments and putting your team in a position to win at the end of the game.
And you don't think DJ Uiagalelei is the guy?
I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying he's a true freshman quarterback that's played one game. All I'm saying is he's not Trevor Lawrence. I don't know much about DJ.
I was actually pleasantly surprised with his performance. He went 30 for 41, came down back from 28-13 down, put up 342 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, a 92.5 QBR, and then he also put up 25 yards and 1 touchdown on the ground. Notably, his long was 30 yards, so he did have some negative yardage after that, but he didn't look bad. He didn't look uncomfortable or out of place.
He definitely showed that he's a talented quarterback and he's a talented athlete.
If I'm a Clemson fan, you know what? Actually, I'm just going to save this for later. The Clemson fans are one of my winners.
Really?
I'll just jump right into it right now since we're already talking about it. My winner number 2 is Clemson fans. You're going from Trevor Lawrence, possibly one of the greatest college football quarterback prospects.
I think by the time his career is over, I think it's pretty safe to say he's the greatest quarterback in college football history. I mean, we'll see how this year plays out, but I mean, I would say that. I don't know what other people would say, but anyway.
There's certainly a case to be made for Trevor Lawrence as the best quarterback in college football history, but I think he's probably the best NFL prospect since Andrew Luck.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that he is the number 1 overall pick. You had some people who are trying to be edgy and predict something crazy, taking Justin Fields or Trey Lance out of North Dakota State over Lawrence in the draft, in their mock drafts. That's not going to happen.
It's ridiculous.
He's gone out and silenced any critics. A COVID positive case is not going to affect his draft stock. So I think that if you are a Clemson fan, you're a winner after this week. You've seen Trevor Lawrence. You've experienced Trevor Lawrence for 3 years. He's been phenomenal the entire time. And now you get to see this new kid, 5-star DJ Uiagalelei. And he looks to be not a significant step down from Trevor Lawrence. In fact, he adds a running game that Trevor Lawrence hasn't shown until recently.
Trevor Lawrence has always been quite a runner, more than people would think.
He wasn't utilized in that way.
Last year, Ohio State, that was the one thing I think the reason Clemson beat Ohio State is because Trevor Lawrence, his ability to run the football.
What I'm saying is that wasn't Dabo didn't use him in that way, or the offense didn't use him that way for a long time until really that breakout rushing performance against Ohio State in the college football playoff. And what I'm saying is they're already showing that they're willing to do that with DJ. So maybe it is that they didn't realize that Trevor Lawrence had that ability, or they didn't trust his backup and didn't want to put him in harm's way, and they now trust DJ as the backup, that they're willing to run Trevor Lawrence more. But I think you couple that offensive evolution from Clemson, pair that with this quarterback that they're going to have come up next, and there's no reason to believe that they're not going to continue their success. Normally, they've gone from Deshaun Watson to Trevor Lawrence with a slight jump, with a bridge with Kelly Bryant. They're going to go Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, DJ Uiagalelei, who already looks like the real deal. Nebraska can't get the quarterback position right, it seems. Clemson can't get it wrong. Not even Alabama can claim that kind of quarterback success over the last 5 to 10 years.
Who was the one quarterback they had too before Sean Watson? He's kind of a bigger guy. He was
Taj Boyd.
Yeah, he wasn't like anything like Trevor Lawrence, but he was better than anything Nebraska's had in 20 years.
I think he won a couple awards in the ACC. Yeah. So Taj Boyd, not a bad quarterback.
It's too bad for him. His career kind of just got overshadowed hardcore because he had Deshaun Watson follow him. Now Trevor Lawrence.
Well,
he was a good quarterback.
I think with each new quarterback, everyone in the national media just forgets how good the last one was, because this new guy, he adds another wrinkle, or the coaching staff gets better at coaching these star quarterbacks, and Clemson doesn't take a step down. So you're like, oh, maybe this quarterback's not really that good and it's just the system. But I think it's just Clemson has the ability to just get these talented guys in the room, and their coaching staff is good enough that they don't bungle the talent that they have. They're maximizing the talent for sure. But if you're a Clemson fan, I don't understand how you don't just walk around this week with a smile on your face, because you are not going to take a step down when it'd be very easy to take a huge step down from Trevor Lawrence.
I don't know. I don't want to say they're like smiling. I think they're confident that DJ is going to be a pretty solid quarterback, but I think Trevor Lawrence is where the line stops. I don't think you get better than Trevor Lawrence anywhere.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's not a significant step down. Like it's a slight step down.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not like Trevor Lawrence is dead and he's still coming back next week. Like DJ can come in and throw.
Well, I'm talking
30
next year.
Yeah, for next season, I'm definitely more confident in DJ because he's going to have these 2 games. He's going to have another off season to get better, and he's going to have the offense to himself. If Trevor Lawrence leaves, we don't know yet. Depending if the Jets have the first pick, which they probably will. I don't know. I've heard talk that he'll stay at Clemson for another year, but it's not. I wouldn't jump off Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, I mean, DJ could throw 40 for 40 for 600 yards tomorrow, and Trevor Lawrence will still be the starter.
I'm not saying that they're going to switch to Trevor Lawrence or anything. I'm just saying, you looking ahead at your future, there's no reason to not be confident because you already have the next guy in house.
I don't think they ever were.
He's already proven that he's not going to be a huge step down.
I wouldn't say they were ever questioning their future. I mean, if you're Clemson right now, you're pretty set.
And as Florida State post Jameis Winston and Texas A&M post Johnny Manziel have shown, and LSU this year, it's very easy to just jump off a cliff after you have your stud quarterback.
Stetson Bennett.
And Jake Fromm wasn't even that good.
Yeah. I think they're kicking themselves right now for not having Justin Fields.
Georgia is a little bit of a special case, though, because Stetson Bennett is their 4th string quarterback. They had JT Daniels and Jamie Newman transfer in, and both those guys either opted out, got hurt, or haven't been in the room long enough for Georgia to trust them. So Stetson Bennett was not supposed to be the starting quarterback, and they actually told him before the season he had no shot of starting at quarterback. So Georgia's not playing Bennett because that's who they think their guy is. That he's their only option.
Well, I don't feel bad for Georgia for having that problem, though, because they let Justin Fields walk. Justin Fields was their guy. Best quarterback in the Big Ten, second best quarterback in the league, probably. I don't know. Yeah, I'd say he's better than Kyle Trask. But, I mean, that they kind of just shot themselves in the foot there.
But how do you justify – I mean, Justin Fields was perfectly justified and smart in leaving Georgia and going to Ohio State.
Yeah, I would have left him too.
But if you're the Georgia coaches, how do you
bench Jake Fromm?
Yeah, how do you bench Jake Fromm?
Well, I mean, we saw it in Clemson. Look how it worked out for Clemson. This was the exact same question we're asking. How do you bench Kelly Bryant for this true freshman Trevor Lawrence? They did that. Look how it's turned out.
But Kelly Bryant hadn't been the starter for 3 years. He'd been the backup, and the year that Trevor Lawrence became the starter, Bryant
had a full season under his belt, I thought.
Well, Jake Fromm had 2. He'd led them to a national championship.
Well, yeah, I mean, Jake Fromm was more established.
He had not been significantly. We didn't see Jake Fromm take a step back until his senior year when Justin Fields was already at Ohio State. So, for all intents and purposes, Jake Fromm was a first-round quarterback. Until Justin Fields left, and then he took a step back. He regressed a little bit.
I was never a big Jake Fromm fan.
He wasn't where he ended up in the draft for the first 3 years of his career. And then he came back, he regressed, and Georgia looks like idiots. But in the moment, there was no reason for Georgia to think that Jake Fromm was a worse bet than Justin Fields.
We can agree to disagree.
I'm just saying it's easy to look back right now and say
they
made a mistake.
It always is, yeah. But, I mean, it's hard to not recognize that talent, though. When you got a guy that's that talented, like
in 5 years.
There were analysts Justin Fields had a crap ton of hype on him that season.
In 4 years, if Logan Smothers transfers from Nebraska and lights it up at another team, are we going to say, wow, that was really dumb of the Huskers?
I would, yeah.
Well, I'm a big Smothers fan, so I would say it was stupid. But there's no reason to think that Luke McCaffrey and Adrian Martinez aren't better than him because they've proven that they can at least kind of competently play quarterback.
But look at the Joe Burrow thing in Ohio State. It's really hard not to recognize talent like that.
But
Like,
Dwayne,
it's not like he just changes teams and it just flips like a switch. Like guys like Joe Burrow, they've been talented for a long time. They just needed a platform to show it. And Ohio State never gave him that. Georgia never gave Justin Fields that. I don't it's not like they transfer, all of a sudden in one offseason they went from 4th-string quarterback with no talent, no future in the NFL. Now we're talking about if they're going to be the number 1 draft pick. Now they're winning Heisman trophies. Like that, there's not that switch. Like,
but again,
Kyler Murray, he's never lost since high school.
But again, Joe Burrow, Dwayne Haskins was a first-round quarterback talent. I didn't think that he was that good, but experts thought he was that good. He put up good stats in the Big Ten. Clearly, when you compare it to Joe Burrow's senior season, you go, wow, Ohio State is stupid. Dwayne Haskins is horrible, and Joe Burrow was excellent his senior year, but his junior year, Joe Burrow wasn't anything special. You can say Joe Burrow really benefited from the arrival of Joe Brady, the passing game coordinator for LSU, who's now with the Carolina Panthers.
He was still pretty good his junior year.
But he wasn't.
He
wasn't significantly better than Dwayne Haskins was at Ohio State.
No. I mean, yeah. But I mean, he was still a pretty good quarterback, I'd say. I mean, he's better than anything Nebraska's had as a thrower probably ever. Like if that junior season from Joe Burrow, I'd have taken that in a second.
Either way, Clemson fans, definitely a winner from this last week of college football.
Fans, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that's what. For you, are you going with a winner or a loser next?
I went with a loser. I better go with a winner, else you guys are just gonna think I'm really negative. Loser.
I thought you were doing a winner. I'm gonna
say the Big 12.
I thought you were a winner, doing a winner.
Oh well, okay. Oh, I just already did a loser, so I won't explain it. Loser's a Big 12, obviously. Oklahoma State, the last chance to make the playoff, just lost to Texas. I don't see Oklahoma State winning out and making the playoff. Nor, I mean, even if you have like a one-loss Oklahoma State team that does win the Big 12, I still think they're gonna find other ways to keep the Big 12 out because it's kind of a joke this year. I just don't think the Big 12's getting in. So rip to the Big 12. No, I probably should do a winner. I could just stay in that same game and say winner, Tom Herman. While that's not a significant, I'm not saying he shouldn't be fired because of that win, but that's a great add to your resume. I said this on Save Saturdays. Beat the number 6 team in the country. You beat them without even playing good football. I mean, Texas sucked and they still won that game. That's really speaking good for your program, that you don't even have to play well and you still figure out ways to win. That says a lot about a team. It says a lot about a coach. So I think Tom Herman was a big winner after this last weekend.
Will's being a little kind of jick-jacking you guys around a little bit, kind of baiting you guys into thinking I'm gonna attack him right now because we all know that I am not a big Tom Herman fan and think he should be fired. And I'm also big on the Oklahoma State Cowboys. But we already had that debate yesterday when we recorded the OG podcast that will be coming out tomorrow, Saturday at 10. So if you want to hear me rebut what Will just said, tune into the Save Saturdays podcast at 10. Otherwise, I'm going to give you guys my first loser, and we're going to be staying in the Big 12 again. And my big loser is Will himself, the Kansas State Wildcat fan. Been touting them as the second coming of the Big 8 Nebraska Cornhuskers, and they took a fat L against West Virginia of all teams.
Fat L. 37-10. I mean, Kansas State, that's just the team they are. I knew it going into the season. It's like, I don't know how to compare them. They're like Oklahoma State. They will step up. I mean, Oklahoma State doesn't step in big games, though. Kansas State, they will step up in big games. They'll always play the Oklahomas and the Texases close. They just, for some reason, do. But when they go play a trash team, they just can't figure it out. It makes no sense. Like, they will forever be an 8-4, 7-5 team, but every season they'll have an upset win where they just play amazing out of their shoes. And it just, and Skylar Thompson got hurt for the season. So they came into this game without a starting quarterback. I don't know, where was it at? I want to say it was on the road.
It was in West Virginia.
Yeah, in West Virginia without your starting quarterback. And I don't know. That's just Kansas State's brand. They just lose bad games every year. I don't know. They're never going to be able to get over the hump. Even with Bill Snyder, they did that.
See, guys, that was me being lazy because I knew Will would do all the talking for me when I said that loser. But Will, definitely a big loser from the last week of college football. And because Will did 2 in a row, I'm going to do 2 in a row. Another loser for you. It's going to be Jimmy Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh, he is on a hotter seat than Tom Herman is with me, I would say. And talk about a guy who just can't meet expectations, beat rivals. He has won one game, I believe. Or no, he's 3-6 against rivals since joining the Big Ten. That's Ohio State and Michigan State. And he has won one of those games at home. So talk about a guy who just can't win the games that matter, but wins everything that doesn't matter. Absolutely obliterated Nebraska in 2018, 63-3.
Yeah.
But the same year, I believe he loses to Notre Dame and Ohio State. Ohio State looked vulnerable. Dwayne Haskins, there were question marks about him. He still ended up going in the first round, but there were question marks about him that year. But Jim Harbaugh, his time in Michigan is slipping away quickly. I think 6 years ago when that hire happened, it looked like the smartest thing that the Wolverines could have done. And he has, for the most part, returned them to national success, but not the success that the Wolverines want.
I want John Harbaugh to work out so well in Michigan. Jim. And this was gonna be mine. If you didn't say this loser, it was gonna be another loser for me. It's like, it reminds me of Opelini at Nebraska. The guy just won all the games that didn't matter. He always got you a 9-win season, but he lost to the rivals, got absolutely demolished in the big games, and you got records set against you. Melvin Gordon against Nebraska set a rushing record on us, and that's just embarrassing. And Michigan's the same way. Every time Ohio State walks in there, we're giving Dwayne Haskins and Justin Fields a Heisman moment, and it's just, you can't have that happen when you're at Michigan. I'm not a guy that likes to fire coaches. You know that if you've heard my Tom Herman take. I don't want to fire a coach, especially one that's as big of a name as Jim Harbaugh, and a guy that wins consistently and has never had a losing season for you, like Jim Harbaugh does. You always hate to fire that guy, but at some point, this was just a bad loss. At some point, you just got to start winning these games, and you just got to turn it around. And what you said, this is a 6th season?
Correct.
That's 6 years. That's a pretty big. That's a long time. Opelini was here for 7 years and he got fired. So and Michigan State's a bad football team. So I mean, I get it's a rival and that's always a close game, but Michigan State's a really bad football team. And yeah, I think Jim Harbaugh. This is probably, if Jim Harbaugh gets trounced by Ohio State this year, I think he's gone in the offseason.
I think there's potential that he comes back for another year solely based on the fact that his buyout is rather large and it's COVID, and Michigan State's been playing this very carefully the entire way. I believe Harbaugh even got in trouble for saying he wanted to play at one point and was forced to do another presser and say he didn't want to play because Michigan admin didn't want to play. So there's a little bit of a rift there too. Not seeing eye to eye on the return to play following the Big Ten cancellation. But Jim Harbaugh, definitely a big, big loser from this last week. Will, how about you go ahead and give us another winner?
A winner. I'm trying to find winners that I've already talked about on the Save Saturdays OG.
Well, while you're looking for
I
one,
mean,
I'll take one.
Why? By the way, LSU got absolutely destroyed. That's a loser right there.
Well, they were starting Miles Brennan, their not so Joe Burrow-esque starter that started the season. He's been injured, so they're on their second string quarterback, and their starter already looked like a significant step down from Joe Burrow. So LSU has been struggling. I'll go ahead and name another winner. My third and final winner is BYU. They won not because they did anything particularly amazing on the field, but Boise State beat Air Force, setting up a undefeated top 25 matchup between the two teams tonight at 8:45 on Fox Sports 1. BYU looking to be another non-Power 5 team to make a move at the college football playoff. This is basically the only big game they're playing this year. It's probably going to be the only ranked opponent that they have on their schedule. So BYU needed this to be a marquee game. If Boise State had gone out and lost to Air Force, which at times in that game it looked like there was potential, BYU would have a horrible resume with an undefeated record and probably wouldn't have a claim at making the playoff. Now, if they beat Boise State in Boise, there's potential for them to maybe make a claim. At least they can be salty if they go undefeated and don't make the playoff. If you want to check my prediction on that game, I do make it on the Save Saturdays OG podcast. But because the game is being played tonight and the podcast doesn't come out until tomorrow, I'll go ahead and tell you I think BYU is going to win. If you want my score prediction, head on over to the OG.
Do I got to give you a winner or a loser?
You have given 2 losers and 1 winner, so
Okay,
let's give a winner.
I'll finish it off with a winner. Biggest winner. I'm gonna give you a player here. Talia Tagovailoa is my winner of this week, putting himself on the national stage against a not very good Minnesota team. I mean, they're a good team. They absolutely just came out like a new team this year. They just look horrible. A fat L for me in terms of predictions this year. I had them going. They were my dark horse in the Big Ten. I mean, the guy balled out. I mean, I think Talia Tagovailoa, while he's at Maryland, that's not a very big school. He's not going to get a lot of wins. But, I mean, I think in a few years, we'll be talking about him on Sundays. I mean, he looked talented. The guy looked good. So, I think Tagovailoa is officially on the national map. Eyes are on him. Big winner.
He certainly had a good performance against those Minnesota Golden Gophers, but a really shaky performance in their Week 1 game against Northwestern.
He's a young guy.
He's young. I don't know if he's as special as his brother. Certainly not being able to start at Alabama and having to transfer to Maryland would indicate that he is not the player that his brother is, but maybe he can carve out a nice career for himself. I mean, with the Terrapins.
I don't think he'll be an early draft pick, like leave a sophomore, junior year. I think he'll be a 4-year starter. He'll need all 4 years.
Yeah.
But, I mean, look what Joe Burrow. He took all 4, 5. Did he take 5 years?
I believe he was in college for 6 years, actually.
6 years. And now look at him. I mean, he's dicing up the NFL. The dude's a monster. I mean, this guy doesn't have to be NFL caliber right now. I mean, we always forget that you're given 4 to 5 years in college football to be good before you get drafted. So if you give this guy 3 to 4 years in college, especially in the Big Ten, a lot of good defenses there. I see no reason why he can't be a first-round pick in a few years.
Well, we're going to be talking more about the Big Ten during our next segment, so be sure to stay tuned for that. We're going to be talking about all things Minnesota, Michigan, Indiana, Penn State a little bit as well. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and we'll be right back after this.
What's going on, Save Saturdays listeners? It's Will Reason here. Did you know that Save Saturdays isn't only a podcast? That's right. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Save Saturdays. Make sure to follow us for even more daily content, including fire sports memes and behind-the-scenes content from the Save Saturdays studio in Lincoln. Remember, that's at Save Saturdays on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And as always, Save Saturdays.
Special thank you to Will for that nice little word about our social medias. Be sure to check those out. Post some great memes. A lot of good stuff about Nebraska. Probably one of the best memes I've ever created was posted last week, so be sure to check that one out. Speaking of Nebraska, member of the Big Ten, a scorned member of the Big Ten, you could say, but they did not play this last week. The game against Wisconsin was canceled. The rest of the Big Ten does not seem to be in much of a better place than a COVID-stricken Wisconsin. Dumpster fires all over the conference. Indiana is 2-0. Northwestern 2-0. Will, what is going on in the Big Ten?
It's Big Ten football, baby. You never know what you're gonna get. Indiana. I'm not surprised at all by Indiana. We saw that we watched them last year. What did they end up 9-4, 9-3?
I believe it was 9-win Indiana. 9-win Indiana.
9-win Indiana. So 9-win Indiana. I mean, they probably would have beat Nebraska if they had a starting quarterback. They played in Lincoln and lost.
No, they won by one score. Yeah.
Yeah, so they did beat us. So what was I thinking? Nebraska doesn't win games. I wasn't big on Indiana. I didn't think they'd come off to this big of a start and beat teams like Penn State. But if they can beat Michigan this weekend, I see no reason why Indiana. I mean, I don't see a reason why we're not pushing them to be in the college football playoff. I mean, they're gonna have to win every game. Obviously, if they lose one game, they're out. I mean, that's no doubt because they're not a big program. But I mean, I would. They're the team that we have to sponsor. I mean, Michigan's out.
Well, if
Penn State's out.
If they beat Ohio State, they'd certainly have the inside track to
Yeah.
make the college football playoff.
But I mean, between Ohio State and Indiana, the Northwestern, I'm not buying the North. I mean, Northwestern's good, but
Here's something
I'm not getting behind them for a playoff push. Right now, it's Ohio State and Indiana.
Here's something that the media's been knocking around about that Hoosiers team. Are they the second best team in the Big Ten? The odds against Michigan this week would indicate they are not even better than the Wolverines. They're currently a 3.5-point underdog. But I think
At home, too. It's in Indiana.
I would like to think that the Indiana Hoosiers are the second best team in the Big Ten. Because Wisconsin doesn't count. They're not even going to have enough games to qualify for the Big Ten championship at this point.
Yeah.
If they were healthy 100%, I would say no doubt Wisconsin's the second best team in the Big Ten, and then Indiana's third. But Indiana's gone out. They beat Penn State, who was preseason number 2 in the Big Ten, I would say. They have a chance to really establish themselves as that number 2 team.
If they beat the only team I'm contending with them is Michigan. Right now, I think it was Ohio State, Michigan, probably Indiana. Minnesota would have been there, but they're clearly not after 2 straight losses. So if they beat Michigan, then yeah, they're totally right behind Ohio State. I don't know. Do they play Ohio State? They're in the same division, so they will play them at some point.
Well, here's the question about Michigan. How much stock do you put in that Minnesota win, given that the Gophers just lost to Maryland?
Yeah,
and we're trailing and gave up a big lead, but we're also trailing early in that game by pretty big. It was a very back-and-forth game, Minnesota-Maryland. But I would say the fact that Maryland went out and beat Minnesota really devalues that win for Michigan. And I don't think...
Yeah, for sure.
I question if Michigan, if they had not been ranked in the preseason, they would certainly not be ranked right now, and they wouldn't even be getting votes.
Yeah, Michigan, they're definitely... And then they had a pretty bad loss, Michigan State. So, I mean, I don't know. I can't drop Michigan down yet, just because I think Joe Milton's a better quarterback. I think Indiana still has a game to prove, because at the same time you can say, well, Michigan devalues their win. Well, what about Indiana's win against Penn State? Penn State now 0-2.
But they played the best team.
They played
in
the best
10.
team, but I mean, they also, you look at Indiana's their win against Penn State. That depending on who's calling that game, that's a win for Penn State. That goal line dive at the end, I mean, that's 50-50 right there. And you play that game on a different day with different refs or anything, I mean, that they could have called that the other way. So,
well, there's a good chance
Indiana still, yeah, that was a good win against Penn State, but they need a big win against a team like Michigan. I mean, they got to win it.
Well, I agree that they have
no 50-50 call.
They can't lose to Michigan, or go to overtime and need a 2-point conversion that no one's expecting to win the game on an iffy dive to the pylon call, because then it's gonna be like Indiana's gotten lucky twice. Do we really think that they're all that? But at that point, there's no way they would end the season below Michigan in the standings. They'd have to lose they'd have to lose a game to Ohio State and then a really bad loss to another opponent. So if Michigan, even if Indiana wins a close game, they're still going to have the standings advantage over Michigan.
I'd be worried about them, though.
So would you be willing to say that even though Indiana beat Michigan, Michigan's still the better team?
Talent, I mean, I don't know. That's a talent. It's like a Northwestern thing. Like they're not as talented as Michigan. I think Michigan has a way better defense. But I mean, it just comes down to who wins the game. That's what you have to give the nod to. But they're at home. They're 2-0. They got some momentum. This has to be a statement game. I mean, they have got to win big, not by like 2 or 3 scores, but I need to see Indiana control the game for a while and prove that they are a legit team. I mean, if they skate on by Michigan and barely get that win, I'm still not confident in them. I definitely wouldn't be confident in them beating Ohio State.
Let's shift to Minnesota. PJ Fleck has a breakout season with the Gophers last year. They have NFL guys all over the roster. Antoine Winfield Jr., Carter Coughlin, Kamal Martin. A couple of receivers, Tyler Johnson, Rashad Bateman. Bateman's not in the NFL yet. Certainly looks destined to be there. And Tanner Morgan as well was getting a lot of buzz at the quarterback position. Winless on the season. Bad loss to Maryland. A non-competitive loss to Michigan. Will, you were a big fan of the Gophers as well.
I was a huge fan. I was rowing the boat this preseason.
Is the boat sinking?
I think it's already sunk, yeah. I mean,
is there any chance for Fleck to restock and be back to that 10-win?
Not this year. In the future, yeah. I mean, maybe. I don't know. If Tanner Morgan's leaving this year, I would say Minnesota's going back to 6-6, kind of that kind of team.
So is it reasonable to call last season a fluke?
For the program, yeah. I wouldn't call. I think the players that were on that team are legit. Like Winfield, he's been a legit presence in the NFL. I think Tanner Morgan will get drafted in the NFL. I think Tanner Morgan's a great quarterback. I think they, as a program, I don't think they're going. It's going to be downhill from here. Back to what we know Minnesota to be. They needed 2 straight years of dominance of good football, probably 3, to get to where they needed to be recruiting wise, because they were ranking and averaging in the 30s. I think is what we said earlier this year. And if they want to compete in the Big Ten, they need to be higher than that. And it's Minnesota, so you're not going to pull great recruits. So they needed something. I think PJ Fleck could find himself, after this season, he probably lost any high-tier job. But I think after this season, he could, maybe one more year in Minnesota, I could see him leaving just because he knows Minnesota's a lost cause.
Well, I think it's also known that among fans, not Minnesota fans, other college football fans, PJ Fleck is known a bit as a snake oil salesman. Maybe just says whatever he can in a recruiting pitch. Do you think, how bad do you think that this start to the season is going to affect their recruiting? Notably, they have one of the best players in Nebraska, in Avante Dickerson, committed right now. Rumors are that his commitment to Minnesota is on shaky ground. Do you think that Minnesota had an outlier of a season and is going to regress to their mean? Or do you think that there is, if PJ Fleck does not leave, you think it's over for the Gophers? That was just the one time they're going to be good.
I don't think we'll see another season like that for another 6, 7 years, 5 years. I mean, I could see him being in Iowa, where they're just gonna, if PJ Fleck stays around, the best I could see them being is like what we see from Iowa. A 6 to 8 win team every year, and then every 5 years they'll pop off for a 10, 11 win season. Maybe win a bowl game. Maybe they'll go to a Rose Bowl at that. They'll be competitive, but then they'll just go right back to what they were, just because they don't have the recruiting, and it's just what Minnesota is. And they couldn't, and they have Tanner Morgan this year. I think Tanner Morgan's probably going to be the greatest quarterback Minnesota's ever had. This is definitely the most talented team they've ever had. And they still are 0-2 and not really figuring it out. So I don't really see them going up from where they are.
I'm glad you brought up Iowa, another Big Ten West team that is struggling out of the gate. 0-2. Was Nate Stanley really that good of a quarterback? Was AJ Epinesa really that big of an anchor on their defensive line? Or is something wrong in-house? We saw a lot of startling reports of racism coming out of Iowa this offseason. Have they lost the culture there? Which seemed to be a winning culture, a consistently winning culture, powerful locker room, physical on the field. They have looked anything but this season. Is the end here for the Hawkeyes?
Oh no, I'm still confident in the Hawkeyes. Not this year. Might be. It's tough to come off a year where you have a bunch of scandals and stuff and play great football. I mean, not everyone can be Penn State, and since the reason for the scandal was kind of a racism. It was kind of that whole thing. That's just a bad light on your program. I don't think Ferentz is going to leave at all. I think he'll be around for a while. I think this year is going to be a rough, rocky year. Maybe next year as well for recruiting. But in the long term, I think the Hawkeyes are fine. I mean, looking at their team, I mean, Spencer, is it Petrus? Petrus. He does not look to be a great quarterback at all. I don't think Nate Stanley was excellent, but the one thing Nate Stanley could do was complete passes and manage a football game, just enough for Iowa to be competitive and win. This guy, 53% completion percentage, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. I mean, it's just and every teams have bad years. Sometimes you get recruits in that were supposed to be good and they just don't pan out. And I think that's what this Petrus guy is. Another surprising thing, Iowa, always a team that runs the football a lot. Through 2 games, only 272 rushing yards. Mekhi Sargent doesn't even have 100 rushing yards. I mean, Mekhi Sargent's been a guy
gashes Nebraska
every year. I mean, we watch him run for 100 yards every year. Mekhi Sargent, not a nationally known name, but if you're in the Big Ten, you know who Mekhi Sargent is. He's a good, solid running back. Not going to go to the NFL and be anything special, but he's a good back.
Well, he'll be like
tough running back.
He'll be like the running back at Iowa before him, Adams.
Yeah.
He was a great rusher for Iowa, always seemed to run for 200 yards against Nebraska, and then went and signed as an undrafted free agent to the Philadelphia Eagles, and we have not heard from him since.
And that's basically what all Iowa players are, really. I mean, they're great in college, but they just don't have that NFL thing. Like they're not
save for the tight ends and offensive linemen.
Yeah, but Iowa, they don't get this extremely talented guys. They don't play that kind of football. It's just like Wisconsin. Aside from their running backs, you don't hear of great receivers coming out of Wisconsin. They're a power running football team. Both of them are. Like Iowa, they don't get that like talented skill player. They live off their offensive line and run game, and they only have 3 rushing touchdowns all season. Like it just looks like Iowa just kind of got off track in the offseason. They kind of lost their identity for a little bit. Haven't really been able to run the football. They don't have a quarterback that can really manage a game, and so I think it's just one bad season for Iowa. I don't see them falling off anytime soon as long as Ferentz is there.
It's actually surprising that Iowa is struggling throwing the ball as well as rushing the ball, because this year they have 2 of probably the best receivers they've ever had in Amir Smith-Marset. I can't remember the other guy's name right now, but
Nico Rigani?
That might be it. But Marset, he's been touted as an NFL caliber player and a possible All Big Ten guy, but he's been struggling, and then he got arrested on a DUI after the game this weekend. So I think that Iowa's in a really bad spot here, and I don't see them falling off of a cliff, becoming a Rutgers-esque team in the Big Ten or anything like that. But they've been consistently an 8-win team. I could see them regress down to 7 to 6 wins. It always seemed like there was a potential for them to surprise and go for 10 wins, but they'd probably be around 8 to 10 wins. I think 8 is the ceiling for Iowa now.
I would say 8 wins for this team is
8 used to be the floor. Now 8 is the ceiling.
I would say 8 is like their average. Like they were never like consistently a 9-10 win team. They're usually in the 7 to 8 wins. Off year they'll be 6 wins. Good year they're 10-11.
I think you'll see a lot more 6s than 9s now.
I mean, I'm not. It sounds like you're down on the football program at Iowa in general. I mean, Iowa. The thing about Iowa is they pull a lot from in-state in Iowa, and they are just incredible at developing players. And they get a lot of 2- and 3-star guys and just make them into tough, strong football players with a great offensive line, smart coaching, and they always are competitive like that. That's something that I don't think will ever change. I don't think a few locker room problems will change that. It's not like they have a huge identity crisis right now. I think they got pushed off the tracks a little bit, and after 1 season or 2, I could see them with a few new recruits and players starting. I'd like them to go 8-9 again. 8 to 9 wins.
I never said that they fell off a cliff. I just said that I think they're going to take a step back and no longer be the team that they were. They're going to be a 80 to 90% version of that. Either way, the Big Ten West up for grabs this season. It seems to be anyone's race at this point. Northwestern has the inside edge at 2-0. They've looked really solid through 2 games. Put the boots to Maryland. Came back down 17-0 against Iowa. Put together a very close win against the Hawkeyes. So be on the lookout for the Northwestern Wildcats. Obviously, Will and I would love to see our Nebraska Cornhuskers come away with a Big Ten West title, especially with the division looking as weak as it does this year. But it will be interesting to see who plays, assumedly, Ohio State. Who do you have winning the West right now?
It's a great question.
I assume you have Ohio State out of the East.
Yeah.
So Ohio.
Indiana's in the East, so the West. I mean, yeah, I'm looking. Iowa's usually be a good pick. Wisconsin, they're just not. They just have a bunch of problems right now. I don't even know if they're going to play. You kind of got to go with Northwestern. I don't really know who else you could even.
Purdue is also 2-0
Purdue's
right now.
2-0, but I'm still confident in Northwestern. Pat Fitzgerald's just he's a special coach. Like he's made it to the Big Ten championship before on weirder seasons. Didn't he make it there at 6-6
in
one
2018?
year?
They lost all of their non-conference games and then won the Big Ten West and went to
that's what I'm saying. Like they've made it to the Big Ten title in weirder fashions than this. So I'm Northwestern's just that team that they're just kind of there sometimes.
Well, and they are consistently what they are, and consistency seems to be one of the most.
That's a great thing about the Big Ten. There's so many teams in the Big Ten that are just consistently what they are. Iowa, Wisconsin, Ohio State, Northwestern. Like you just know what you're gonna get.
Well, in a year where the consistent teams are looking to be completely, other than Ohio State and Northwestern, completely different than what they are. Consistency seems to be the key for any team in any conference in any sports league this year. So I'm going to have to go ahead and go with Northwestern out of the West as well, though I do have them losing to Nebraska this weekend. If you guys want to catch our predictions on Northwestern, Nebraska, and more college football games, be sure to check out the Save Saturdays OG podcast airing Saturday at 10. Make sure to check myself out on Offsides with Ethan Petrick. We have an announcement for that show as well. We'll make that in the next episode. That airs Mondays at 2. Take Out Tuesday with Will and I. Also Tuesdays at 2. Other than that, always remember to
Save Saturdays.